Okay, it's 1 o'clock. I would like to call this meeting to order, and the proceedings of this meeting will be recorded and made available on the internet. I'd like to move ahead to item 1.2 of our agenda, which is the roll call. And Clerk Jesse Clark, could you please conduct the roll?
Thank you. Donna Taggart, CAO Treasurer.
Present.
Evan Grieger, Director of Public Works.
Present.
Barb Waldron, Director of Building and Planning, CBO.
Present.
Adele Arbor, Planner.
Present.
Sarah Delamarter, Junior Planner.
Present.
Bianca Dragicevic, Deputy Clerk.
Present.
Matthew Wesley, Deputy CBO Building Inspector.
Present.
And Jesse Clark, Director of Corporate Services Clerk, is present. And I saved the best for last. Mayor Lambshead.
I am present.
Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Present.
Councillor Franzen.
Present.
Councillor Braybrook.
Present.
Councillor Cadigan.
Present.
Thank you very much, Jesse. Okay, I will move on to item 1.3 of our agenda, which is land acknowledgement and moment of reflection. We respectfully acknowledge that Trent Lakes and Peterborough County are located on Treaty 20 Mississauga territory and in the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the William Treaty First Nation, which include Alderville, Beausoleil, Curve Lake, Georgina Island, Hiawatha, Rama, and Scugog Island First Nation. Trent Lakes respectfully acknowledges that the Williams Treaty First Nations are the stewards and caretakers of these lands and waters in perpetuity, and that they continue to maintain this responsibility to ensure their health and integrity for generations to come. We will now take a moment to reflect on these principles and our duties and responsibilities as members of council. Okay, thank you. We will move on now to item 2 of our agenda, which is the disclosure of pecuniary interest. I will ask a member of council to please declare your pecuniary interest prior to speaking about an item on the agenda you have an interest in. I'm seeing no hands. We can move on to the approval of the agenda. I see Deputy Mayor Armstrong. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Lambshead. I would like to propose that the agenda be amended to move item 16 before item 14. So information before the staff report on the Ratepayers Association meeting. And so I would move that that amendment be made and that we approve the agenda as amended.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? I'm seeing Councillor Braybrook for a seconder. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Okay, the approval of the agenda as amended. We'll move on to item 4 of our agenda, which is the adoption of the minutes of both the regular council meeting of May the 16th and the statutory public meeting of May the 16th. I would entertain a motion. Seeing Deputy Mayor Armstrong and Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Yes, thank you. Before we vote on that, I'd like to call out the regular council meeting minutes, and I'd like to make a motion of amendment to those. Okay. So if we could do them separately.
Yes, we certainly can, yes. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Okay, thank you. So on page 16 of my agenda, I'm not sure if that can be brought up. Oh, on the minutes. It's resolution 2023-259. Sorry, I think this would be easier if we have it in front of us.
Agreed.
Great, thank you. I don't think we clearly articulated it, but I think the intent of council on the second line was to cancel the June 3rd, 2023 Ratepayer Association meeting, not to cancel the 2023 meeting. And that would leave it open so that we could reschedule if we chose a meeting this year. So the amendment would be to simply add the words, cancel the June 3rd, 2023, et cetera, in those minutes. And then I would move that they be accepted as amended.
Okay, thank you very much. Do I have a second for that motion? Okay, Councillor Cadigan. Any discussion? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? The motion has carried. Okay, now we can move on to item 4.2, which is a statutory public meeting of the. Prepared to make a motion. Let's see, Councillor Franzen for a mover, and I need a seconder, which is Councillor Braybrook for a seconder. Any discussion? Being none, all in favor? That motion is carried. We can move on to item 5 of our agenda, which is committees and boards. And we have committee of adjustment minutes. So, I'm sure we've had a chance to peruse them. As anyone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Franzen for a motion.
Motion to receive.
And do I have a seconder for that motion to receive? Deputy Mayor Armstrong, any conversation? Being none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Okay, we can move on to 5.2 of our agenda, which is liaison reports and council boards and committees. Does anyone have anything to report? I'm seeing none. We can move on to item 6 of our agenda, which is statutory public meeting pursuant to the Planning Act, which we have none. Item 7 of our agenda is the business arising from this public meeting, which we did not have. Item 8 will be presentations. We can go to 8.1, which is Deputy Mayor Armstrong. Would you please do your presentation?
Thank you, Mayor Lamseth. A little preamble, I am not an expert in this area, but I have done quite a lot of sleuthing to find out what exactly is happening in Trent Lakes in terms of broadband and cell expansion. And I would also point out that Councillor Cadigan was with me on one of these calls, so at the end, if he has anything to add, I would very much invite him to do so. Okay, so first slide, please. Yeah, I'm just going to briefly go through the difference between broadband and cell. Everybody probably understands that, but it's a good place to get started. And then I'll talk specifically about the expansion of cell service in Trent Lakes, and then specifically about broadband or internet expansion. You can just keep moving. Great, thanks. So broadband is what you get at your home for your computer. It's the transmission of wide bandwidth data over a high-speed internet connection. So it comes through a fixed point, and then it's kind of a depiction. It will typically be through wire or satellite or whatever, so that you can then get the internet connection in your home. Yeah, and that's typically what we have here. So there's an example of what a fiber optic connection would look like on the next. There you go. Okay. And then cell, or wireless or mobile, is the ability to access voice or internet from your portable or handheld devices. So essentially, you're getting a signal from a tower and you're on the move. Let's say you're in your car, and then the point of contact shifts from the nearest tower to the next nearest tower. And that would explain why sometimes we drop the calls because the towers are too far apart, or there are hills in between them, or it's too dense. So that's what cell looks like. And I think we all know that we're at 5G iteration or generation of wireless technology. Okay, the next slide, please. So cell service, the expansion project that's going on is managed through the Eastern Ontario Regional Network, which covers all of the counties of Eastern Ontario from us all the way to the Quebec border. They awarded a contract exclusively to Rogers in 2021, and their working plan is to upgrade all existing 321 towers to 5G. That has almost been completed, and it will be completed by the end of this year. So some of you may have noticed an improvement in your reception. They're also planning to build 261 new towers, so almost doubling the number of towers across that area. And everything, excuse me, is planned to be completed through 2025. This is funded, and you've all seen the many, many announcements, but it's funded by a combination of federal, provincial, and county government money. And when I say county government, that's our taxes that's going to pay for that. So we do have money in this, as well as some investment by Rogers because obviously they will have a revenue opportunity in building this infrastructure. And it's over $300 million. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this just demonstrates that in between those two blue circles where there are cell towers, a car passing in between them may drop the signal if they don't have one, or there's density, or there are hills and valleys. I've learned that the desired spacing of towers in our area is about 15 to 17 kilometers apart, generally speaking. But when you get into dense areas and hills, they need to be as close as 5 to 6 kilometers. So in thinking about the distance between ourselves and the Quebec border, that's a lot of towers to try and cover all of that area. Next slide, please. Their objective, and we talked about this earlier, or I guess I talked about it last night, is to achieve 99% coverage in Eastern Ontario for making and receiving cell phone calls. Lowers a little bit, achieve 95% coverage so that individuals can get their email, do web browsing and social media services. And then finally, 85% coverage that would support video conferencing, movie streaming, and other things. So in some of the more rural areas of our township, you probably won't be able to get those higher grade and level services through this project. And next slide. Let's just skip that slide if we can. That's just the breakdown of how the funding is being provided. And you can see that Rogers is putting in some of the money themselves, up to 151,000, but that's supported. The County of Peterborough, this is the important point, contributed over $500,000. So we absolutely have some investment in this, and we should be holding them accountable for it. Next slide, please. This is the status of where they are. So as I talked about the tower upgrades, 297 out of 312 have been completed. In the county, there are 25 towers and they have all been upgraded. In terms of new towers, I mentioned 261 are planned for the area. 24 new towers are planned for the county. One came before us recently that's going to be situated up at the Crystal Lake area. And that's why I asked if we have any other sites we would like to offer. We should absolutely be proactive in doing that. Of those 24 planned for the county, only 2 have been completed. So they are slow in getting this done. But again, the deadline is the end of 2025 for them all to be completed. And then it just goes into a little bit of detail into what the requirements are for some of these new tower builds. Some of them are co-located with existing providers, whether it be Rogers or somebody else, and some of them will require land use authority. So this is a zoning issue and requirement. Okay, and I should just point out that's as of April, may have been updated, but it won't have changed very much. This is just their depiction, the Eastern Ontario Regional Network, of what it takes in order to construct a new tower. And surprisingly, it is a fairly lengthy process. It seems like it should happen overnight, but it doesn't, because of starting with trying to find a property that meets their needs, and they do that scoping. Then they move in to negotiate a lease, and it goes on from there. So for instance, the one at Crystal Lake or Crystal Lake Road, it probably will be another year before we actually see a tower there. Okay, next slide, please. And this is a map that I pulled from their website. On the left-hand side, you can see those blue areas kind of vaguely. Essentially, those have no coverage right now. And the purple is inadequate coverage. And the slide on the right shows what the end goal is, which is to get to their 99% coverage target across that area. That's where we're headed. And the next slide, please. So broadband, the other project, this is under different jurisdiction. The province of Ontario has taken the lead on this. they held a reverse auction for providers last year. In our area, there were 3 successful bidders. Bell was one of them, and they seem to have the greatest part in all of this. ExploreNet was another, and Rogers was a third. Fiber optic cable is the priority. ExploreNet is there kind of as a backup because there will be some areas where fiber optic cable simply cannot get to the locations. The target date for getting high-speed optic cable in our area up and running is March 2025. And from the map, the original map that we've seen, there were over 3,000 homes that are targeted, and I'll show you a map in just a minute. Some of you may have seen these little white survey cars around, and I forget, MCIA or MIAC or something like that. They're the surveyors who are going out and mapping where these cables will go, most of which will be above ground, and they will be on hydro poles. So there's an agreement between Bell in particular and the hydro company, Ontario Hydro, to co-locate those. They're also planning to put some of these cables underwater in pipes. So where we have island properties or water access only properties or ones that are quite far from the roads, the cable will be fed underwater as part of this project. So it's pretty extensive. Next slide, please. That was their schedule. And as you can see that they're doing permitting. I would also say surveying and mapping this year and into next. And they will stagger the construction of this from 2023 to 2025. And towards the end of 2024, some locations will start to hear from Bell in particular to see if they would like to hook up to the service. And it should all be done by the end of 2025. The plan is to, if you choose to get the service, Bell will get the cable to your house. You will sign up for a monthly fee, and I'm told it will be the same as what it is in Toronto. We'll see. Next slide, please. The goal of all of this is to get 100% access to high speed with at least 50/10 service by the end of 2025. They want to maximize the wired connections, and the intent of the competition for this project was to get the most cost-effective means of implementing it. And there are 2 places to go to if you want to see more information about the project. But let me go to the next slide if we can. Yeah, this website is an interactive map. So you can go onto this site and plug in Trent Lakes, which I have done here, as you can see, and you can zero in to any little section. I know this is very hard to see, but those purple lines are where the fiber optic cable is going to be going into our municipality. So Joe and I were particularly interested in up the 507, looking at where it was going. And I saw happily that it was going along Baker Drive. And I saw that it was going to go to many of the cottages that are on our chain, Mississauga, Catchacoma, et cetera. Don't know that we can, yeah, there we go. Yeah, so that's zeroing into the 507. You can see how it's branching out, and that's the plan, is to put cable along all of those areas. So encourage you, if you're interested, to go to that map, look into your own property address and see whether you can expect cable to come there. Next slide, please. So that's it. I just wanted, again, to give a bit of an overview because, like you, I've been hearing how much money is being poured into this and the time frame, but there was nothing specific about what's happening in our municipality. Hopefully this provides a little bit more information and gives some resources that our residents can go to find out what's happening in their particular area.
Thank you very much for that. For Deputy Mayor, from Councillor Gadigan, do you have anything to add to that?
I do not. Just thank you. Also,
Any other questions from other members of council? I'm seeing none. Thank you very much for that presentation, Deputy Mayor Armstrong. Anyone prepared to make a motion? Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to receive the presentation by Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? I see Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. Any other conversation? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Okay, we want to move on to number 9 in our agenda, which is delegations. We have none. We can move on to staff reports. We have none for public works. We have none for recreational facilities. We have none for fire and emergency. And we can move on to item 10.4.1 of our agenda, and that's Matthew Wesley, our deputy CBO and building inspector. Go ahead, please.
Good through you, Mayor. Prepare this report to make council aware that our current agreement with the Peterborough Humane Society was not, it had the potential to significantly run over what's budgeted per year. So we did reach out to Peterborough Humane Society, who did give us a draft agreement, which is included with this report. There's 3 options right now. The first option would be that we sort of, I guess, go with the status quo. The second option would be that we enter into a new retainer-based agreement with Peterborough Humane Society to provide animal services in the township. And otherwise, the option 3 is that we could not have animal services, and we can monitor the situation and see as the need arises that we can maybe enter into another agreement.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions from council? Go ahead, Councilor Braber.
Through you, Mayor. Thank you. Thanks very much for that, Matt. Just a couple questions. How long have we been using PHS for that?
They've been providing animal services in Trent Lakes for as long as I know of.
Okay, now the last year and last couple of years, how many times have they responded?
Under the new or our current agreement, they've responded quite a few times and seen quite a few animals enter into care, more than we had ever seen previously. I think last year we had more animals enter their care than we had seen in the last 2 or 3 years. When we entered into the new and current agreement, we didn't expect that the service that we need more services provided, but that has not been the case. We thought that we would see some cost savings, but very quickly it became apparent that our current agreement could run up considerable costs.
Okay, and if we weren't to use PHS, what's the remedy?
Currently, I mean, there's no legislation that requires a municipality to provide animal services. So we did use the example that Minden Hills up north, they don't currently have an agreement with the pound. They're a little more robust when it comes to selling tags and licenses for dogs. We could explore if there was a private facility, but last year when we entered into the current agreement, it looked like the cost would be about the same and likely wouldn't have any kind of retainer option. So we could explore like a private facility to do that, but I think if we were going to provide town services, the Humane Society would be the people to go with.
Right, okay. And the 15,000 a year, is that a retainer?
Yeah, that's a retainer that would be charged monthly, covers any kind of services if any animals enter into care. And then that would also provide for PHS officers to go out and respond to calls.
And the 15,000, that's any call outs that would be over and above the 15,000, or that would be a tallying, I guess, each call out?
Sorry,
go ahead.
Yeah, that is above and beyond the 15,000. So as we get calls for services, they would charge us minimum 3 hours for the response and mileage.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Armstrong, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, thanks, Matt, for this. Personally, I wouldn't want to see any additional workload put on our building and planning department. So I don't think 3 is really an option for us. I'm not really sure I understand the difference between option 1 and 2. It's only $3,000, but I guess I would ask for your preference or recommendation between those 2 options.
I believe for you, we would prefer option 2, just because, again, that allows for their staff to go and handle any of the calls. And there's a bit of a question of if it was up to our staff, which we don't really have time to go and collect animals, if residents in the area would take the time themselves to deliver animals to the Humane Society.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else have any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Franzen.
I'd like to make a motion at this time, and I would support option 2.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Deputy Mayor Armstrong, any conversation? I would just like to make a small comment that I think it's very important that we have this service, because it's more and more people are living in our community. We have more and more issues like this, and I think it's going to escalate as we move through our coming out of our shutdown and COVID situation. I think we'll find we'll have more animals that we need to deal with. And I think this is a good solution. It doesn't really increase our budget a lot. And my only other question would be, where are we getting that money from? I think it's in that report. But that's just my comment. Okay. And I will, any other conversation? I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Matthew. Okay, we can move on to 10.4.2 of our agenda, which is Sarah Delmarker, our junior planner. Take your time to get ready there.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. On today's agenda, there is a municipal appraisal form for consent file B-44-23 submitted by agent James Liversage on behalf of the property owner Tracy Belton. The subject land is located at 86 Elwood Crescent. The intent of this proposed lot addition is to transfer lands from 86 Elwood Crescent to 70 Elwood Crescent to rectify an existing encroachment of a septic system currently servicing 70 Elwood Crescent from 86 Elwood Crescent's property. The application conforms to the Trent Lakes official plan, as the intent of the consent application is to adjust the lot line boundary to correct an encroachment and not create a new lot. The existing residential uses of the subject lands will remain the same. Both the severed and retained lots conform to the Trent Lakes Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw B 2014-070 as amended, as the minimum lot areas, frontages, and depths of both lands located in the Hamlet Residential Exception 11 zone will conform to the policies outlined in the bylaw. Both the severed and retained lands are part of a plan of subdivision, so a deeming bylaw is required to effect a legal merger. Elwood Crescent is a municipally maintained road, and due to it being part of a plan of subdivision, the travel portion of the road is known to exist entirely in the road allowance. Staff have reviewed the application and recommend that council supports the proposed severance with the following 2 conditions. 1, that a merger agreement is to be entered into between the transferee and municipality and registered on title at the expense of the applicant to merge the severed parcel with the abutting land identified as 70 Elwood Crescent, such that these 2 parcels shall be considered as one lot and shall not be dealt with separately. And 2, a deeming bylaw is to be obtained for the subject lands to facilitate a legal merger of the separate lands with the benefiting parcel. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anyone on council have any questions? I'm seeing none. I think it's a kind of a straightforward idea there to reduce some setback issues. Okay, thank you very much. We can move on to 10.4.3 of our agenda.
Well, we need a motion.
Yes, my apologies, yes. Go ahead, Councilor Randall.
I'll make a motion
The motion is
to
to
support.
support the severance, and do I have a second? Deputy Mayor, or Councilor Cadigan for a seconder. Any other conversation? Being none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Okay, we can move on to 10.4.3 of our agenda, which is Adele Arbor, our planner. Go ahead, Adele.
Thank you. And through you, Mayor Lambshead, this report outlines the workings of the Administrative Monetary Penalty System, AMPS, and the process that's involved with such a system. The AMPS enables a municipality to resolve disputes to bylaw infractions in a timely manner and in a less formal setting than the provincial offences court. Every person who contravenes a provision of a designated bylaw will receive a penalty notice as opposed to a fine under the Provincial Offences Act. Within 15 days of receiving a penalty notice, a person may pay the penalty or request that the administrative penalty be reviewed by a screening officer. Should the screening officer find sufficient and legitimate reasons to do so, may reduce the penalty, cancel the notice, or confirm the penalty, or provide additional time to pay the penalty. If a resolution cannot be reached, that person can request the matter be further appealed and heard by an independent hearing officer for a more formal review. The hearing officer's decision is final and binding, and there is no further appeal process. If a penalty is not paid by a specified time, said amount will be added to their property taxes. It is staff's intention to administer AMPS with existing staff and monitor the influx of appeals to determine if it would be necessary to recommend hiring of a new administrative position to administer the program. Municipal employees will be appointed as screening officer, and it will be necessary to hire a hearing officer who would be delegated quasi-judicial and legislative authority. AMPS is not a new process and has been used for parking tickets initially. In 2016-2017, the Municipal Act was amended to allow municipalities to expand the use of AMPS to include all regulatory bylaws. Therefore, it's being recommended that Council receive the report from the planner with respect to the introduction of an administrative monetary penalty system, AMPS, and support the proposed implementation plan as outlined in the report. And further, that Council direct staff to bring forward existing municipal bylaws as they are updated, as well as a new nuisance bylaw, all inclusive of monetary penalties for review to the June 20th, 2023 Council meeting. And further, that Council direct staff to bring forward a draft administrative monetary penalty system bylaw and hearing officer bylaw for review to the June 20th, 2023 Council meeting. And further, that Council will consider the approval of the administrative monetary penalty system bylaw, hearing officer bylaw, along with all updated bylaws and nuisance bylaw at the July 11th, 2023 Council meeting. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Adele, for that report. Anyone have any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Cadigan.
My understanding, this would apply to property standards as well. And we have a procedure in place currently to deal with property standards. I'm wondering what the change would be.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, all our existing bylaws would require updating to include administrative monetary penalties, as if someone gets a notice that they've violated the property standards, then they would get the notice with the penalty on it, and they would either have to pay that penalty, or if they required to have it appealed to a screening officer, they could do so as well if there was any issue with any of the contents of what the violation was, if they wanted to appeal it. So all our existing bylaws would have to be amended to go into the AMP system.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, any other questions? Go ahead, Councillor Braver.
Through you, Mayor, just to add to Councillor Cadigan's question. Now, if there is something that comes forward to the screening officers, the screening officer, it's going to be in-house.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. Screening officer will be a staff person, and if the person who receives a penalty notice isn't satisfied with any resolution through the screening officer, they could appeal it to a hearing officer, and that person would have to be appointed by bylaw by municipal council.
Okay, and that hearing officer, would that also be in-house, part of staff of Trent Lakes?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's not the intent, because you need someone who's a little bit more qualified in terms of the judicial system. It could be a retired solicitor. There would be certain criteria you'll see when the bylaw comes forward that a person would need to fit into that criteria in order to apply for that position of being a hearing officer.
Okay. Just one more question. As far as, will it include the zoning bylaws as well?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the intent is, I've seen some municipalities identify zoning as one of the bylaws under the AMPS, but I would like to have some further discussion with our solicitor, because there are provisions of a bylaw that could be violated and you would issue a penalty notice. However, we want the ability to be able to go to Superior Court as well. So those are just some of the details that we need to work out with our solicitor. And further, for council's information, we're kind of looking at the low-hanging fruit on some of our bylaws to bring forward to the June 20th. The turnaround time is very tight, but I wanted to bring something forward to council on the 20th, not for you to enact the bylaws, but at least to review and identify what the monetary penalties would be for various violations. So I'm looking at some of our existing bylaws, such as the fireworks bylaw. There's been, the original bylaw, I believe, was in 2015, and we've had 2 amendments to it. So when I reviewed those bylaws, I was going back and forth, and now we're consolidating those bylaws and putting the administrative penalty to which each of the violations would reflect. And also we're looking at introducing a draft nuisance bylaw for the 20th, and we're looking at our noise bylaw. So we're looking at the bylaws that would be beneficial to the municipality during the summertime process, and something like the property standards will require a little bit more work and working with our building department and the chief building official. So that may come at a later date. So I don't want the expectation that we're going to have all our municipal bylaws on the 20th, but the ones that we would like to enforce quite readily and as soon as possible, those ones will be here for at least your initial review.
Thank you very much. Another question? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Langston. Thanks very much, Adele. First of all, very pleased to see this coming forward. This was one of the planned actions in the 3-year phase short-term rental plan that we put in place, which Councillor Franzen will remember and Councillor Braybrook is now familiar with. So wonderful to see that it is happening. Secondly, I think we all know how things have gotten backed up in the courts, especially with COVID. And so it's become almost completely ineffective to try and work through the courts to enforce any of these bylaws, which has been a bit of a problem and noted by our residents. So I welcome it. I know there's a lot more hard work to go forward with it, but I think I'm pleased to see it here. I had only one other comment, which is I just wanted to make sure, and I'm sure that you do have it, wasn't mentioned, that as we look at the bylaws one by one, we make sure that where it's appropriate, the fines apply to the owners, not just the people who are perpetrating whatever it is, fireworks or whatever.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we are looking at that as well as looking at escalating fines. So if someone, a similar, or say the same property owner violates the bylaw a second time, the fine will be escalated. So it has to go with the property owner. So say that property changed hands and we got a complaint about noise at the same property, but the owner was different, we couldn't use the escalating fines. It would have to be to that same property owner. So there are some details that we're trying to work out, and we hope to be able to go live by the middle of July, right?
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Councillor Franzen.
More a comment than anything else. I'm so happy that this has come forward. I know it's been about 2 years in the works, and with our short-term rentals, it's essential that we have the AMPS program, and I'd like to make a motion in support of the recommendation from staff.
Okay. Any other comments? Before I guess I better get a seconder. Someone second? Okay, Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a seconder. Any other comments or questions? I just have, okay, Councillor Braber.
Sorry, through you, Mayor. Yeah, just a comment to yourself, Adele, and everyone. I've received several phone calls and emails from just concerned residents, specifically to dealing with zoning bylaws and how this may affect the zoning bylaw. So their concerns were if it were to escalate in the present, the way the zoning bylaws are, the process, they're just worried about that there would be a bias if the zoning bylaw was, I guess, to be brought into the AMP system. So that was just, I just wanted to bring the concerns forward from several individuals.
Okay.
And that is also what my point was too. If you administer a monetary penalty for a zoning bylaw issue, you would think that that clarified, that negates the zoning issue, but it shouldn't. You still need to deal with the zoning issue. So I think we have to proceed with some caution on that, because if you send me a fine for infringing on a zoning issue, I'll pay the fine rather than go through the process of changing the zoning. So I think we have to be cautious on how that proceeds.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I totally agree, and that's why I'd like to talk to our solicitor, because you can't list every violation at the back of a zoning bylaw and with a monetary penalty. So there's got to be a fine line on what can be fined or, a penalty put against a violation, and which has to go through the process of a superior court or a provincial court. So those details will be worked out, but one of the zoning bylaw will be one of the bylaws we'll be looking at the end. We're just trying to bring forward those that we can readily and get them in effect for the summer.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments? I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Okay, thank you very much. We can move on to 10.4.4 of our agenda, which is bylaws to remove the holding on Unit 42 of Oak Orchards. Go ahead, Adele Farber, our planner.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor, the property owners, Dean Smith and Lisa Truman, are the owners of Unit 41 in Oak Orchard, and they have satisfied the provisions in order to have the holding provision removed. An archaeological assessment, and the report was entered into the public register of archaeological reports. They have entered into a site plan agreement with the municipality, and there is documentation to confirm engagement with Curve Lake First Nation. And so having satisfied this, we have a bylaw on the agenda today to remove the holding provision for this particular property. And the owners are selling the property. So the design of the new owner's home on the site plan agreement is what the new owners will be proposing and building on that property.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions of Adele? Seeing none. Okay. We have a motion just to receive that. Go ahead.
The motion to receive?
Do I have a seconder for that motion? I have Councillor Cadigan. Any questions?
I just want to
Go ahead, Deputy
confirm
Mayor.
that we're receiving the report, but we're also supporting the approval of the bylaw.
And I think the bylaw will be on later in our agenda. Okay. Any other comments? I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, we can move on to 10.4.5 of our agenda, which is Adele Arba, our planner, for the removal of another holding. Go ahead, Adele.
Yes, thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, this is a removal of a holding symbol for 16 Buckhorn Trail, which actually has access to County Road 36. And the property owner, Ron Windover, has satisfied provisions for removal of the hold. And these provisions are including the existing building or structures that aren't compliant with the permitted uses or provisions of the general commercial zone shall be removed or relocated. And actually there is an application before the Committee of Adjustment later this afternoon to recognize the existing building setbacks. So that's the process that they're going forward, not removing or relocating, but just approving the existing locations. A septic permit has been issued by Peterborough Public Health, confirming that the sewage flow rate for the commercial use does not exceed 3,427 liters per day. And a site plan agreement has been executed between the municipality and the property owner. The property owner has leased the lands for commercial purposes, which would include the operation of a coffee baked goods shop in the log building closest to the County Road 36 and a craft store in the green building that's located behind the log building. I also want to identify that in the site plan agreement, there were some provisions requested by Peterborough County Public Works Department in regards to making improvements to the entrance to widen it. to add an extension to the culvert if needed and to pave all the way to the entrance from the gate to County Road 36. So until that work is done, the commercial uses will not be able to operate. So therefore, it's being requested that council receive the report from the planner regarding the removal of the holding symbol for 16 Buckhorn Trail, and that council support the approval of a bylaw to remove the holding symbol, which is on today's council agenda for consideration.
Thank you very much, Adele. Any questions of Adele? Go ahead, Councillor Caddy.
I was just going to approve or move that we approve the motion to
Recommended. Okay, we have a motion to approve it as recommended. Do I have a second? I see Deputy Councillor Franzen for a seconder. Any other conversation? And seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. We will visit that bylaw later. Okay, we can move on to 10.5 of our agenda, which is finance. We have none. And we can move on to 10.6, which is administration. Donna Taggart, our CAO treasurer. Can you please speak to this file?
Thank you, and through you. So before you is a report on bylaw enforcement services for Trent Lakes. So council approved the bylaw enforcement recommendations of the short-term rental working group at the March 8th, 2022 regular meeting. And phase 1 of these recommendations for 2022 included a review of enforcement processes and practices and exploring after-hours bylaw enforcement options. Phase 2 recommendations for 2023 included budgeting for enhanced bylaw administration and enforcement. So the current bylaw enforcement in Trent Lakes occurs between Monday and Friday during working hours, 8:30 to 4:30. For after hours and weekend calls, Task Page Communications act as a message-only call center for the municipality. Those calling are directed by task to complete a written complaint and also to contact municipal staff during business hours. Task Page provide weekly updates to the municipality on all calls received, and Trent Lake staff follow up as required. So in keeping with the recommendations, the 2023 recommendations, staff are looking for support to enter into an enforcement agreement with Maximum Protection on a trial basis from June 6 to July 6, 2023. And there is an amount of $10,000 already included in the 2023 approved budget for these enhanced bylaw services. So I've outlined the duties that would be performed by TAS and Maximum Protection in the report, which really involves TAS relaying details on calls received directly to Maximum Protection through email, with Maximum responding to noise and fireworks complaints within 24 hours of the receipt of a call, after hours and on the weekend. Maximum would provide the good neighbor approach document to occupants, and then they would also provide a warning of the ability to issue a Part 1 Provincial Offences Act set fine as currently allowed under the 2016 noise bylaw. So obviously, should we continue to use the services of Maximum, we would update that with the AMP program once that's in place. So staff will provide council with an update on the volume of calls received after the trial period ends, and at that time discuss extending the contract if warranted. So today I'm looking for council to receive the report and authorize the CAO to execute a security agreement with Maximum for after hours and weekend bylaw enforcement, and support appointing Maximum, and there's a bylaw later on today, as bylaw enforcement officers for the municipality.
Okay, thank you very much. Any comments or questions from council? Go ahead, Councillor Cadigan.
through you, Mayor Lamb said, the $10,000, is that for 1 month from
So-
now until July?
Right. So thank you, and through you. No, that is the total budget for 2023 that's in there. So the cost would not be $10,000. It's anticipated for sure. That is just what's in there for the year. So we do have a budget allotment for this type of work.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Thank you very much. I have 4 questions, but I think they're short. The first one is, how will this work if we introduced the administrative monetary penalty? Will it be shifted over to those kinds of fines if AMP is in fact implemented while this is going on.
Thank you, and through you. So because we don't anticipate that coming to council until July 11th, this trial only goes until July 6th. So we would certainly include, because that would be under the noise bylaw, that would be brought to that meeting for approval. So we could switch at that time.
I should have asked my second question first then. I wonder if it would be better to have this as a 2-month trial, just to give us long enough period of time, one, for the public to know that this is in fact in place, and two, then we can start to monitor the activity and the trends and so forth. I don't know how others feel about that, but we certainly have adequate funding to do that. I just wonder if a 2-month trial would give us a better overview of the success of this program.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't know what the feeling is of council. Any other questions, and we can get back to them.
Okay, I have 2 more questions. I'll finish them quickly then.
Okay.
Could we put something into the agreement with Maximum that they respond within 24 hours? However, they use all best efforts to respond, I don't know, within 2 hours or something that's, so, we're not going to require it of them because we know it's not realistic, but at least there would be some acknowledgement that we really like them to try and get there on the scene while the activity is still occurring.
Thank you, and through you. I have had discussions with Maxim. The intention would be to get there as soon as they can, but there would be no guarantee to a time standard other than the 24 hours. So we could certainly have that discussion again. I don't know whether that would be something formalized in an agreement, just because that is the nature of the services they offer, but we could certainly reinforce that that is important. They get there as soon as possible.
Okay. And the final question is just that I hope, and I'm sure that you do have plans, if this is approved, to publicize it widely, so that we do let the public know that this is now available. Because certainly, as I have made my rounds, and I think as others, people just feel we don't have sufficient bylaw enforcement. Although I continue to tell them we don't have an enforcement problem, we have a complaint problem because we have so few of them. Nonetheless, the impression out there has been that we don't have we have a bylaw problem, right? Or enforcement problem, sorry.
So thank you, and through you, yes, we will make sure we push that out through our social media. We are also in the midst of fixing the website and making it easier to file complaints through a button on our main screen. So yes, we will push it out for sure.
Great. Thank you.
I agree. I think some complaints, you need to be there fairly quickly, because if you're not, the complaint's gone and there's no proof of any issues. So it is important after hours and weekends that we do get some complaints, I'm sure. Any other questions? No?
Just one.
Go ahead, Councilor Braber. Yes.
So the Maxim, the contract with Maxim, this is more of a stopgap until the AMP got up and running. Is that correct?
So thank you, and through you. This would be something that could be utilized. Currently, we don't have enforcement over the weekend. So council could consider continuing this type. There's other alternatives to this type of enforcement, but it's a way to enforce some of the noise complaints and some of the issues that are happening. But we would see that we would still need third-party support or some kind of support after hours and on the weekends. And the AMP system would just reinforce what could be done to stop the behavior, essentially.
Just one more clarification. So how would, if we still have Maxim, how would that interact with the AMP as far as how would the AMP be enforced? Would it be through Maxim, or would it be reporting from Maxim to the municipality and then the AMP system kicks in?
Go ahead. Adele.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I foresee the situation as the security person would issue the ticket. They would be the issuing officer, not issuing the ticket, but the monetary penalty. So we would have a ticket book, and the Maxim would have that particular book, and they would write the violation out as them giving the monetary penalty. And that person would have 15 days to pay the penalty or ask for a screening through the screening officer.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? Seeing none. Anyone prepared to make a motion? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Thank you. I will make the motion that we receive the report, that we authorize the CAO to execute a security service agreement with Maximum, and that we support appointing Maximum Protection staff as bylaw enforcement officers for the municipality for the period of the agreement.
Okay, I have a seconder, Councillor Braybrook. Any other comments?
Sorry, through you, Mayor. I like Deputy Mayor's suggestion of expanding it to 2 months. So that would that take it to August 9th then?
Thank you, and through you, I would say August 6th, if it's exactly 2 months. But we can put whatever date council would like.
Okay, thank you very much. I personally would like the 2 months because you generate more information in order to move forward with it or not with it. I think 2 months is important. I hope that will be covered with our $10,000 budget. I think it should be, depending on the volume of complaints that we might generate, because we need to communicate with all our residents that this is happening so that anybody that does have an issue needs to get a hold of us so that we can mitigate it. Okay.
Mayor Vincent?
Yes.
If I may, then I'll amend my motion to include that council authorizes CAO to execute a 2-month trial agreement. Just insert that into the motion.
Okay, and Councillor Braybrook is the seconder. Are you okay with that amendment?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Thank you very much. Okay, we can move on to 10.7 of our agenda, which is corporate services. Jesse Clark, our Director of Corporate Services and Clerk, can you introduce the next 6 slides? Go ahead. 7.1.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lamb's staff initiated a review of the committee structure to ensure that it is operating well and is effectively meeting the needs of the municipality. The municipality currently has 2 advisory committees, being the Economic Development Advisory Committee and the Parks, Recreation and Culture Advisory Committee, and has recently reestablished the Short-Term Rental Working Group. Staff reviewed the committee and board policy, strategic plans and guiding documents, as well as input from the previous 2 advisory committees in preparing the report. Staff also discussed a number of other considerations, including roles, flow of information, staff support, and member recruitment, engagement, and retention to establish 3 options for council's consideration. The first would be a working group structure. This would involve a very specific mandate and time-bound recommendations to ensure efforts are focused on moving council's top priorities forward. Working groups have effectively supported council's decision-making in the past and was the model recently adopted by the Township of Selwyn. With this structure, staff would recommend not more than 3 working groups be established at any time to ensure sufficient resources. The second option would be 1 advisory committee. So should council want to continue with an advisory committee structure, a consideration would be to combine the 2 existing advisory committees in order to provide a balanced perspective, acknowledging that the 2 committees are interconnected and often overlap. The mandates continue to align well with council strategic themes, and council could continue to establish working groups as necessary. Another option for the current advisory committee structure would be to have multiple advisory committees. Staff would again recommend not more than 3 advisory committees be established to ensure sufficient resources, and staff have outlined some additional advisory committee options for council's consideration. Based on the direction council wishes to proceed, staff have drafted appropriate recommendations for each of the options outlined in the report.
Thank you very much. Is there any comments or questions from council? Go ahead, Councillor Franzen.
You have a few comments. I believe we need the 3 committees, Economic Development, Environmental Committee, and the Parks and Rec Committee. I don't believe that we have to limit the committees or working groups. I think this would be up to council. We're a very responsible council. I do not think that we would overburden staff. I believe the Parks and Rec committees should probably have a joint meeting once every year, just to I was pushing that when I was on the last Parks Committee, that we meet with the Economic Development Committee and see how we should proceed. I also believe that if we decide to go with the Environmental Committee, that the first option would be to meet 2 times a year. And if more meetings are needed, we can amend that at that time. And I would like to, we have the report that's how Selwyn deals with it, but we don't have any other municipalities, especially in Peterborough County, how they deal with their committee. It would have given us a broader idea of how to proceed.
Councillor Franzen, thank you very much. Any other comments? Deputy Mayor Armstrong, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Lampton. And thank you for those comments, Councilor Franzen. I honestly would like to defer any decision on this for a couple of meetings. This is a big decision for us to make. And I think it will be an important one for the next 3.5 years. And I don't think there's any huge rush, although obviously we need, if we're going to have committees, we should get them in place. So that's my first comment. Secondly, to me, our highest priority this term is to implement the plans that we have engaged for. So we have an economic development recovery and strategy plan. We have an open spaces plan. We have I'm going to forget them, strategic priorities plan. We have a community improvement plan is going to come back to us. I think implementation is the name of the game here. And I'm not sure what role advisory committees would play in moving those implementation plans forward. But I'm not against it. I just need to think more about it. To me, I want to go back to those specific plans we have, look at the implementation timetable and who's responsible for it, and look at what resources we need to get that done. And if we need committees to help us get it done, let's do it. If we don't, then let's not. Let's just have working groups on specific issues. So I'm really not prepared yet to make a decision because I think this is, I need to do more homework and I need to think about this a little bit. And I need to hear from others in terms of what other councillors think.
Okay, thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Armstrong. Any other comments? Go ahead, Councillor Franzen.
Having these committees would also help with engagement with our ratepayers. It gives them a buy-in and they become part of the solution, not part of the problem. So I would like to see this. I don't mind deferring it. I'd also like to get comments from the past 2 chairs from our Economic Development Committee and from our Parks and Recreation on what they would recommend.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Yeah, I'm on the same mind as our deputy mayor. This is a huge file. I don't want to jump into something. I think we do need committees. I don't know how many we need, but I think we need committees, and I don't think we need 3 or 4 working groups, but I wouldn't want to be limited to that. I think one working group with the right composition could do a lot, and you change the composition of the working group as the work that is needed to be done changes. I think committees do a very important part of our helping us make decisions, and I think we can utilize their expertise in all the different areas to help staff proceed with the implementation of some of our recommendations. But I do agree deferring this decision today to gather a little more information for myself. I feel that I've not done my own homework enough. I do agree with the deferral. Okay. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none. Okay, would anyone prepared to make a motion? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Yeah, thank you very much. So then let me go ahead and make the motion, see where it goes, that we receive the report from the Director of Corporate Services Clerk, and that council defer a decision on a committee structure. I should put a time frame on it, but yeah, I know. Until the July meeting? Is that a reasonable? I know there's proper process, but can I get nods to see if that seems like the right time frame for people?
Yeah, I think so. I'm a long way through that information, so yes.
Okay, then I will add that into the motion. We defer this until the July, forget the date, whatever that meeting is.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Seeing Councillor Braybrook for a seconder. Any other conversation? Go ahead,
Request
Councillor
a
Franz.
recorded vote.
Okay. You would like a recorded vote? I won't call for the vote then. Go ahead.
We're ready for the vote.
Clerk. I think we are.
Okay. Councillor Franzen, are you in favor?
No.
Mayor Lamshead?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Armstrong?
Yes.
Councillor Braybrook?
Yes.
Councillor Cadigan?
Yes.
That motion is carried.
Okay, thank you very much, our clerk, Jesse Clark. We will move on to 10.7.2 of our agenda, and it's the purchase of a portion of the municipal road allowance of East Clear Bay Road. Jesse Clark, our Deputy Director of Corporate Services and Clerk, can you please introduce this file?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lamshead. Staff were approached by Neville Knupp, the owner of 22 Arview Way, as a portion of the municipal road East Clear Bay Road crosses their property. Neville has proposed having the northwest square of the land conveyed to the municipality to eliminate the encroachment and any possibility of liability to them for having the road on their property. It is Neville's intention to also purchase the shoreline road allowance in front of their property. So I've given a bit of background in the how the cost will be apportioned, and staff recommend to proceed with acquiring the land for a sale price equal to the cost of the shoreline road allowance.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions on this idea? Go ahead, Councillor Franzen.
Just a comment, I'm aware of this piece of property and I would support a motion with staff's recommendation.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments? Seeing none, anyone prepared to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Councillor Franzen, do I have a seconder for that motion? I have Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. Any other conversation? I think personally, this is a very good idea. This alleviates some issues for the landowner and it ends up being a purchase of the shoreline road. So, okay, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you very much. Creative solution. Okay, we can move on to item 10.7.3 of our agenda, which is once again Jesse Clark, our Director of Corporate Services and Clerk. Can you please speak to this file?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lamshead. This year's AMO conference is coming up and staff are looking for direction on which delegations, if any, should be requested. The deadline to submit requests is this Friday. And at the Roma conference, I've provided what delegations were requested for that, for council's information.
Okay, anyone have any comments in regards to this item? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Thank you. Mayor Lamshead, I think we can remove the firefighter certification one, because we had that conversation with the Solicitor General at Roma, and we had the conversation with our fire chief. So I would leave it to him if he feels that we need to pursue that further, but I don't think that we do. I would also ask that we add a delegation to MNRF regarding floating accommodations and getting them reclassified, declassified as vessels and reclassified as floating accommodations so that municipalities could in fact have jurisdiction over those floating houses,
Accommodations.
containers,
Yeah, that is,
et cetera.
at this point, not a really large issue in Trent Lakes, but I think it will be. It's many, many different areas are having some issues with that.
Exactly.
I would be in favor of that. I don't know if our fire chief is online with us. Maybe he could speak whether he would like us to try it for the third or fourth time to speak with Minister Presner.
Yes, Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, through you, Mayor. I believe it is a futile endeavor, trying to speak to the ministry with regards to this matter with certification, to be honest with you. I do have a report coming to council in the near future with regards to the new standards and the costing and all that, as I promised Councillor Braybrook a while back. So I am working on that. Might give you some more insight to the next delegation if we want to send something after that time.
Okay. Thank you very much. It will be too late if we wait, but we can do that at another time, at another convention. Thank you, Chief Brockbank. Okay, any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Councillor Cadigan.
Comment, this is through you, Mayor. This is my first attendance at a conference, and I'm looking for any suggestions that you may have, because I'm new.
Just one point, I will be there with you, but I will be representing the county, and the county has authorized me to be with you at any delegations that Trent Lakes would like to do. So I will be able to be with you, and we can go and do them together.
Excellent.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? So I think we have a path forward. We're going to talk to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing about Bill 23. I believe that's important. I think we need to keep discussing that because some of the moving forward points have been stopped for a little bit about some severances on prime real estate. They've been held up for a minute. They're going to revisit that, and I think some of those things need to be discussed. And we're having MNRF. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead,
Thank
Jesse
you.
Clark.
Through you, Mayor Lamstead, I just wanted to clarify the other delegation request to MMAH was regarding an amendment to the oath of office. Did you want that one included as well?
I think so, because that's an important thing. We're getting a lot of support from other municipalities in this province, and I think that's an important change that we should be doing and we should have done many, many years ago. Any other ideas or? Okay. I guess we will need a motion to that effect. Is anyone prepared to make a motion? Go ahead. Councillor Franzen.
I'd like to make a motion to support the delegations that we authorize the clerk to look into.
Okay, and do I have a seconder? I see Councillor Cadigan. Any other conversation? We'll call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Okay. We can have a conversation, Jesse, about some of the ideas in this motion. Okay, perfect. Okay, we can move on to 10.7.4, which is the sale of an unopened road allowance. Can you please introduce or speak to this file, Jesse Clark, our Director of Corporate Services. Clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lamstead, at the September 6th, 2022 meeting of council directed staff to proceed with the application from Patty Hanna to purchase an unopened road allowance adjacent to their property. In November, a notice was placed in accordance with the disposal of real property policy. A comment was received from the neighboring property owner to the south, and council deferred a decision until staff have had the opportunity to discuss with the applicant the proposal of splitting the unopened road allowance. The neighbor to the south is requesting that the unopened road allowance be retained in municipal ownership as a buffer between the two properties. However, if it is to be sold, they would like to purchase the southern half to facilitate a driveway. Staff are recommending approving the sale of the unopened road allowance to both of the adjacent landowners. And in order to allow both parties sufficient time to get the necessary funds and documents for the sale, staff recommend that the approval for this proposal would expire in 3 years.
Okay, thank you very much. Jesse, anyone like to have a comment or a question? I'm seeing none. I would just like one little comment. I think this makes sense to split it between the two landowners because they gain valuable land on their properties, and I think you will protect some wetlands and things in behind there. That there's some very significant wetlands on the property and behind that. It's kind of important to protect that. Okay, any other comments or questions? Anyone prepared to make a motion? Seeing Deputy Mayor Armstrong, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Lamstead. I will make the motion that we receive the report, that we declare the unopened road allowance as surplus, that we authorize the stop-up and closure of said unopened road allowance, and that we authorize the sale of the unopened road allowance to the adjacent landowners, and that we authorize the mayor and clerk to execute any required documents.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Braver, any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Okay, we can move on to 10.7.5 of our agenda, which is Jesse Clark, our Director of Corporate Services Clerk. Can you please speak to this file?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lambshead. At the May 2nd, 2023 council meeting, council directed staff to proceed with an application to purchase an unopened road allowance, a portion of it from Karina Luoma. A notice was placed in accordance with the disposal of real property policy, and no comments from neighboring landowners have been received. The recommendation is to receive the report, declare a portion of it as surplus, authorize the stop-up and closure and sale to the adjacent landowners, and authorize the mayor and clerk to execute any documents that may be necessary for the sale.
Okay, thank you, Jesse Clark. Any comments or questions, council? I am seeing none. Anyone prepared to make a motion? See Councillor Cadigan.
I'll make a motion that we support
Okay.
staff recommendations.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? Need Councillor Franzen for a seconder. Any other comments? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Okay, we can move on to item 11 of our agenda, which is correspondence for information. We have several. We can adopt them all at one time, or we can speak to anyone in particular. Go ahead, Councillor Franzen.
I'd like to pull out the Galway Hall Board.
Okay. Item 11.4.
There's an issue with the minutes. There was a minor mistake
Okay,
about taxes, and it's supposed to read an increase of 23 increase, but the way it reads is that it's $23 per 100,000 on taxation. So one word is missing there. I don't know how we want to deal with it.
I
Do we
think
want to defer it back to the committee, or?
if we could probably leave that up to our clerk to decide what we're going to do, or how we proceed with changing that.
Through you, Mayor Lambshead, I could just make a note and pass it along. We don't take the minutes for the for this board or committee, so I can pass along the error.
And the committee's well aware of it because at the meeting, I gave them a 4-page document that Donna had prepared for us with the increase in the taxation.
Okay.
So the chair has that. So I think it was just a typo.
Well, you can probably just,
And I wanted to mention also that they're having their strawberry supper on the 1st of July. 2 seatings, one at 4 o'clock.
if we can use that in an information item, if you don't mind, Councillor Franzen.
Okay, not a problem.
Yeah, we can. So I really don't think there's any action required for this, just make it note that it was an error in the minutes.
Yep.
Okay. So can I get that in a motion? So-
Right, we'll just
You just,
do it. We
okay,
can just
we can just-
proceed.
okay, perfect. Okay, now can we speak to the other items on the information items? Would anyone prepare to make a motion? Oh, Councillor Braver, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor, I'll make a motion to receive the rest of them. I'm saying acceptance, the one pulled out by Councillor Franklin.
Do I have a seconder for that?
Sorry, I think we can receive it
Is
as
we
well.
receive
If
them
there's
all?
no action from it. Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, we can receive them all. And do I have a seconder for that motion? See Councillor Franzen for a seconder. Any other conversation? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Now we can move on to item 12 of our agenda, which is correspondence for information, for action. We can move on to, we can receive them all at one time unless someone would like to speak to one of these. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Yes, I actually
Here's a bit.
would like to pull out 12.1, 12.2, 12.3, 12.5, and consider them for, I don't know if I can do mass motion. The motion for all of those was going to be a motion to support those specific items of correspondence.
I think that's something we can do. That's part of our procedure. Yeah. So that's item,
So the Highway Traffic Act Amendments 12.1, which allows municipalities to install automatic speed enforcement systems on their roads. 12.2, which is calling for an improvement in municipal codes of conduct and enforcement. 12.3, which is what we talked about earlier, a declassification of floating homes as vessels. 12.5, asking for provincial support for the huge increases in insurance costs that municipalities have experienced. I think that's it.
okay. We can do all of those in one motion, if you would like to make that motion.
I would make the motion to support those 5 items of correspondence.
Do I have a second?
4, sorry,
4.
I can't count.
I'll second, but I'd just like to comment on the legislation amendments for the municipal codes of conduct. There's no sense in having the code of conduct if members can't be removed for being in violation of the code.
True enough, and that's for an integrity commissioner to decide, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Any other comments? I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. We can move on to all other correspondence for information. If anyone prepared to make a motion.
I would like to take out 12.7.
Sure, go ahead.
It's Ontario Federation of Snowmobile Clubs, advertising request.
Okay, we can speak to that. Go ahead, Councillor Brandon.
I would support whatever we have done in the past.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? Is that a motion?
That's a
Okay,
that's a motion.
Okay, do it. See Deputy Mayor Armstrong, go ahead. For a seconder?
Second.
Okay, do I have any other conversations? I'm seeing, I think we did a business card size, I believe,
Yeah.
which is $350. And I would just have to ask our treasurer, where would we get that money from?
Thank you, and through you. It was the same amount as in 2022, and council did support that. And council does have an advertising budget that they could use, and there's currently just over $2,200 in that. So there is space.
Thank you very much. Okay. I have a mover and a seconder. Now, any other conversation? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Okay, now we can go back, go through these one at a time. I'll go ahead, Councillor Braver.
Through you, Mayor. I think we're all pulling things out, so I'm gonna join in and I'm gonna request to pull 12.8, just for a comment, for a question. I'm wondering if this has any benefit or anything to do with the work that our planner Adele is working on as far as the heritage, and whether that would be a benefit to support that.
I think is Adele on the line, or are we? Adele has left the building. I think that's important to support because I think it's only a couple of years you're on the registry anyway, and I don't even know if we have a building on our registry yet. I think that's important work that's in the future and it's coming, and I think it's important to support that as well. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
I like the idea of extending the 2-year window within which a municipality has to declare it as a heritage site. I don't like the fact that they want to extend it indefinitely, because I think then you just have lists that grow and grow and grow and grow, and no action is ever taken on them. So there are specific requests I couldn't support for a definite period of time.
Okay, any other comments? I will call for a vote. Oh, sorry.
What are we?
Just to support, I think that was what your motion was, to support.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Am I able to, through you, Mayor, to rescind that on the comments of the Deputy Mayor? So I agree with the Deputy Mayor's comments.
Okay, we can
Consider it withdrawn?
consider that motion withdrawn?
Yes,
Okay,
please. Thank you.
so now we have item 12.4, 12.6, 12.8 We can look at them individually, or we can receive them all at the same time. Go ahead, Councillor Caddy.
Motion to receive.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? See, Councillor Franzen, any conversation? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Now we can move on to item 13 of our agenda, which is bylaws. And I think we can just go through them one at a time. So item 13.1 is the removal of the hold on 16 Buckhorn Trail. Is anyone prepared to make a motion? Go ahead, Councillor Franzen.
Make a motion to support.
And do I have a seconder for that motion? I see Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. Any conversation? I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Okay, we can move on to 13.2 of our agenda, which is the removal of hold on Unit 41 of Oak Orchards. Prepared to make a motion? I see Councillor Braybrook.
Make a motion to support or approve.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? See Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. Any other conversation? I just want to make one point. This has been a huge file for our building and planning department, and I'm so enjoying seeing these things move forward as they come to us as council. Okay, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Thank you very much. And we have item 13.3. It was the appointment of our bylaw enforcement officers. Is anyone prepared to make a motion? See Councillor Franzen.
Motion to support.
I am seeing for a seconder, Deputy Mayor Armstrong. Do we have any comments or questions? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Thank you very much. Now we have business, or yes, we're going to go to item 16 of our agenda first, as we amended our agenda earlier. So we're going to go to information items, and I think Deputy Mayor Armstrong, you wanted to speak to something.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Lampstead. I had two. One is a quick one about our libraries. Both branches are now collecting food in support of our Trent Lakes Outreach Food Bank, which I think is a really positive and complementary program that they're doing. Also this summer, the library is running a fine forgiveness program for those of us who keep our books longer than we should, because we're slow at getting them read. And the deal is that they will pardon any fines with a donation to the food bank, which I think is a very clever program. The second thing is around a meeting that I attended this past Saturday and wanted to just briefly talk about before we move to item 14.1, and that is that Selwyn Township had a town hall on Saturday for an hour and a half. It was a special council meeting, publicized as that, and it was a very informal, interactive meeting, which may be a kind of model that we want to consider as we talk about our own ratepayer association meeting. It was strictly between council and 23 cottagers who arrived. It was done very informally. Council sat on chairs, and the other participants sat on chairs in a big circle, no table, no obstruction between them. There was about a 2-minute introduction by the mayor, and then they opened up completely to questions. So no presentations, no formalities, no restrictions, which I understand could be a problem, about how often an individual spoke to a particular issue or follow-ups, et cetera. And as an example of that, the entire first half hour was on short-term rentals. And at times it was not pretty. People were emotional about it, as we can imagine, but it never got out of control and nobody really had to be subdued. So it was managed, again, strictly by council. The mayor answered a question first and then looked around to her other council members and asked if anybody had anything to add. And at some point, pretty much everything had been said anyway, but the mayor did move the meeting along from short-term rentals to open it up for other questions. As in conversations with our clerk, we do need to follow up and see what the minutes for that meeting look like. I think they will be very process-oriented only. I don't think it will go into detail about the issues. And it will be up to individual council members at a next council meeting if they believe an issue needs further work, and they will bring it up at that point in time. So quick overview of what it looked like. They've been doing it now for 15 years, so this is not something new. Sometimes they get as few as one person or as many as 23. But everybody seemed to go away satisfied that they had been heard. Not necessarily they got resolution, but that they had been heard and they had the opportunity to raise an issue, however large. Some of them were very small. There's a stretch of road that's not safe because everybody speeds and only 2 people talk to it. So it ranged from shared issues to individual issues, but it all got done and the meeting wrapped up 10 minutes early.
It's interesting. I mean, we're about to embark on our town hall meetings with a mayor and deputy mayor, and I think that that's an interesting twist to it. I mean, it would all have to be advertised. It would be a public meeting, I'm assuming. Those are interesting ideas.
No, sorry, just one more comment is that there were only 2 staff members there, the clerk and the CAO, and they sat outside of the circle at a table and were silent, basically. So their only job had been to organize the meeting, obviously publicize it and take whatever minutes.
Okay. Thank you very much for bringing that to our attention, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
You're welcome.
Any other information items while we're on that? Oh, go ahead. Councilor Brandon.
For the strawberry supper at Galway Hall, Saturday, July 1st. Adults $20, children 6 to 12, $10, children under 5 free. 2 sittings, 4 p.m. and 5:30 p.m. And I've got telephone number for reservations. We also have this on our municipal website.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Any other information items? Go ahead, Councilor Braber.
Through you, Mayor. Thank you. I had the privilege last week to attend a conference, the Ontario Association of Police Services Board conference from Tuesday to Thursday. It was very informative. It was jam-packed, full of, there wasn't much time to take a breath, but there was a lot of information received. And what I'm going to plan on doing first is I'm going to do a small presentation to our Trent Lakes Police Services Board, July 27th. It'll be just a short PowerPoint of an overview of what the conference dealt with, and then once I've finished that with the Trent Lakes Police Services Board, I'll put it on an agenda item for the following general council meeting, and I can inform you then as far as details. But it was a very good conference, and the majority of it was surrounding the transition from the Police Services Act to the Community Safety and Policing Act, the CSPA, and the logistics around that. And I can tell you that everything's in flux. We had the Solicitor General there as well, sharing information from his area. And initially it was supposed to be implemented this month, but looks like it's going to be pushed till August. So there'll be more information coming forward. So I just want to let you know.
Okay. Thank you very much. We've been bumping into Minister Kresner quite a few times in the last little bit. He was at the Peterborough County Days, and Peterborough managed to talk to him then too. Okay, thank you very much. Any other information items? I'm seeing none, and thank you very much, Councillor Braber, for representing Trent Lakes at that conference. Okay. We can move on back to item 14 of our agenda, which is business arising of a previous meeting, and I would like Donna Taggart, our CEO Treasurer, to speak to item number 14.1.
Thank you, and through you. So before you is the report that was brought by the CAO Treasurer to the May 16, 2023 regular meeting regarding the annual Ratepayer Community Association meeting for council consideration. So the staff recommendations outstanding in this report include council to direct staff to consult with all ratepayer community associations regarding the format and objectives of the annual Ratepayer Community Association meeting hosted by Trent Lakes, and report back to council prior to the approval of the 2024 meeting schedule. There was also a request for council to direct staff to incorporate town hall sessions between members of the public and council members into communication planning currently underway. And council should also consider the request presented at that same meeting by Gary Jarose. Specifically, there was a request that the June 2023 annual ratepayer meeting be deferred and rescheduled, and that a working group comprised of representatives from council, staff, and ratepayer groups be constituted to plan a ratepayer meeting in 2023, specifically to confirm purpose, format, timing, topics, and communication plans, and establish an ongoing process for the planning of future annual ratepayer meetings. And council could also consider the town hall format presented today by Deputy Mayor Armstrong. So should council wish to defer a decision on the format of the 2023 meeting, pending feedback from the various groups, staff would ask that there is direction provided today on the recommendation for town hall sessions to be incorporated into communications planning currently underway.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you have any questions? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Mention. Maybe just a clarification. The mayor and I had previously suggested that we were going to hold open houses. Let's not confuse them with all these other things. So we have already scheduled 5 open house meetings in June and July, one at each of the community centers, including BCC and at Oak Shores. So I would say that's already out there and published. So that I think will go ahead, and it's one element of our meetings and opening up more to the public. So I just want to hope that's okay. It's gone. We've gone ahead. That's done. It will not involve staff, and we are having it with only 2 members of council so that we are not bound by the Municipal Act and our procedural bylaw, and they can be completely informal and drop in.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Cadigan.
Through you, Mayor, Deputy Mayor Armstrong, does that mean no other councillors can be there?
I would refer that to the clerk.
Through you, Mayor Lambshead, to Councillor Cadigan, the meeting rules in the Municipal Act say that a meeting is when a quorum of council is present and they materially advance the business of council. So I would say if you were an observer of these town hall sessions, it would not constitute a meeting. However, if there was participation from all 3 council members, it could be perceived as a meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, that's answer your question.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay, I think we need a motion of some form here. Not sure. Go ahead, Councillor Franzen.
I'd like to make a motion to defer till we receive more information from our ratepayers and cottage associations.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Go ahead, Councillor. Yeah, Councillor Braver for a seconder. Any other comments? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with Deputy Franzen. I think we would like to consider still having the 2023 meeting at a later date. I would suggest we get more feedback on it, but I would like to suggest that how we do that is that we have staff reach out to all of the associations and the public for their input on what the format and content of that should be, and that we ask for that feedback, let's say by the end of June, which would allow us to do planning for a meeting perhaps in September. So I want to add to your motion, but I said too many words.
Go ahead, Jesse Clark, our clerk.
Thank you. Perhaps I could take a stab at this. So it would be that council received the report. The council directs staff to consult with the ratepayer community associations regarding the format and objectives of the annual ratepayer community association meeting hosted by Trent Lakes, and report back to council at the July 11th meeting with recommendations.
Yep.
I think that was the gist of the combination of motions.
Yeah. That was my assumption anyway, that it was staff that was going to reach out to ratepayers.
Okay, so we are okay with that minor amendment with the mover and the seconder. I'm assuming, yes. Okay.
Just
Go ahead,
through you,
Councillor
Mayor, just
Braver.
for clarification, so that amendment that our clerk just mentioned, that's through Councillor Franzen? That's been moved.
Who
That's
made
been,
that motion? I think Councillor Franzen made the motion,
Yes,
but
I
he
did.
didn't. Who seconded that motion?
Councillor Braybrooke.
Councillor Braybrooke, so you're okay with that amendment?
yes.
Okay, any other comments? I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. In just case you're looking and watching online and you don't see the hands, they are going up. That's why I'm looking. Quite often on my laptop, I don't see the hands go up. There's a little lag time sometimes. Okay, thank you very much. We can move on to item 15 of our agenda, which is a notice of motion. Item 15.1, Deputy Mayor Armstrong, would you like to speak to this item?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Lamstead. I'm going to read this because I find it distracting if it's on the screen and I use different words. So, whereas in 2023, the Municipality of Trent Lakes and Peterborough Public Health are focusing septic inspections on approximately 200 water access only properties in the Cavendish area. And whereas the municipality is asking for volunteers with boats who are willing to drive the inspectors to the identified properties. And whereas this will require boat operators for 25 to 30 days this summer to complete the inspections. And whereas these volunteers will be giving their time to support this effort, and they will also need to provide the fuel for their boat travel. And whereas in terms of funding, the budget assumed inspection of 300 properties and will actually, and was approximately, let me back up. Whereas the budget assumed that there would be an inspection of 300 properties. However, it will be approximately $33,000 underspent because of the reduction from 300 to 200. Therefore, council approves a budget of up to $3,000 for reimbursement of volunteer boat drivers' fuel with a daily maximum of $50 per volunteer per day. And if necessary, for any additional costs for commercial transportation, such as a water taxi or boat rental for the inspector, which may be needed to fill in if we don't have enough volunteers.
Okay, thank you very much for that motion. Is anyone prepared to second that motion for conversation? Councillor Cadigan, you're seconding that motion?
Yes.
Okay, any conversation? Go ahead, Councillor Braybrooke.
Through you, Mayor, it's just a comment. I wanted to thank the Deputy Mayor for bringing that motion forward. It's important that we recognize and support the volunteers that assist with the important work that's continuing. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other conversation? I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, we've done our information items. Now I would like to go into a motion to go into closed under the Ontario Municipal Act, section S3239(2), to discuss a personal matter about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, municipal employees, and contracted persons. And D, for labor relations or employee negotiations for municipal employees. So I would entertain a motion to go into closed. Councillor Cadigan for the mover, Councillor Franzen for the seconder. All in favor? That motion is carried. We are going into close. Please. Okay, we are back. I will entertain a motion now to rise from closed. See Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a mover and a seconder. Councillor Cadigan. Roll call for a vote. All in favor? The motion to rise is carried. We are now back in our regular council meeting. And I'm completely lost. Where are we going? Business arising out of our closed meeting. We can go to item 18.1, which is the adoptions of the minutes from our last closed meeting. Anyone prepared to make a motion? See Councillor Braybrooke for a mover and Councillor Franzen for a seconder. All in favor? That motion is carried. The minutes are adopted. We can move on to item 19 of our agenda, which is adoption of the confirming bylaw. Entertain a motion to do so. Councillor Cadigan is a mover. Councillor Franzen is a seconder. All in favor? That motion is carried. We can move on to item 20 of our agenda, which is adjournment. Would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn? Councillor Braybrooke for a mover. Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a seconder. All in favor? That motion has carried. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Thank you all members of staff that have joined this meeting. Thank you very much. Thank you, council.